Okay, so for this deep dive, we're looking at a really interesting stack of source material. It's all focused on a movement that got quite a bit of attention a while back, hashtag walkaway.
Right, hashtag walkaway. And this source material, well, it presents it mainly as a kind of grassroots thing. Individuals, former Democrats, basically explaining why they decided to leave the party.
But, and this is crucial, the source doesn't just leave it there. It adds this whole other layer right alongside those personal stories. We're talking about some pretty significant allegations,
Yeah,
links to Russian influence, bots, that kind of thing.
exactly. So what we want to do here is really unpack what's in this specific source material. We need to look at both sides presented here. The reasons people say they're walking away, as it's written in the source,
Mm-hmm.
and then these allegations of foreign interference that are described right alongside them.
Yeah, and we really need to stress this because some of this is obviously politically charged. Our aim is just to report impartially on what this source contains. We're not backing any particular viewpoint here.
Not at all.
We're just trying to convey what the material itself presents. Okay, so let's unpack this source.
Right. So let's start with how the source actually describes the movement from the perspective of the people involved, or at least the ones it highlights. It points to a specific origin, a 6-minute video posted by someone named Brandon Straka.
And the source goes into detail about the reasons Straka gives in that video, why he's leaving the Liberal or Democrat Party. He lists quite a few things he's rejecting.
Yeah, according to the source, he says he rejects racism of any kind and marginalizing people based on gender or sexual orientation. He also specifically rejects what he calls, quote, tyrannical groupthink.
And it goes on, the source details him rejecting a system that lets, and I'm sort of paraphrasing from the source here, an ambitious, misinformed, and dogmatic mob suppress free speech.
Right, and create false narratives and just ignore the truth. That's how the source puts it.
He also, according to the source, rejects accepting junk science and superstition just to push agendas. And then there's a simple quote the source includes, I reject hate.
And the source notes he says these were the principles that made him a liberal in the first place, but now they're the reasons he's, well, walking away.
The source material then elaborates on his view quite a bit. It states that Straka believes the left has devolved, that's the word used, into behavior that's intolerant, inflexible, illogical, hateful. The list goes on.
Yeah, it's strong language in the source.
Yeah.
Misguided, ill-informed, un-American, hypocritical, menacing, callous, ignorant, narrow-minded, and even blatantly fascistic behavior and rhetoric. That's all laid out in the source as his perspective.
Wow. Okay. The source also includes some more specific claims attributed to him, like the idea that the left has become anesthetized, quote unquote, to prejudice and bigotry.
Uh-huh. And that it's embraced, again, according to the source's description of his views, hating and blaming all white people.
And there's more. The source highlights his claim that advocating for gender equality has somehow morphed into hate and intolerance of men and masculinity.
And similarly, that the fight for LGBT equality has, quote, mutated into a demonization of heteronormativity. The source frames this as attacking sort of conventional gender ideas.
Right. And the source adds one more point from him, that some people who identify as victims are now, in his view, calling gay people privilege.
So quite a detailed account of his perspective in the source.
But the source doesn't only focus on Straka, it brings in other voices too, people giving their own reasons for leaving the Democrats.
Yeah, it mentions an African-American speaker, for instance, says they were raised Democrat but felt the Republican Party was a better fit for their conservative Christian faith and a kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps view. That's how the source describes it.
Okay. And the source also talks about a hashtag walkaway YouTube channel.
Yes, it mentions that this channel shows videos of different people explaining why they left. And the source specifically points out seeing a transgender person and a Latino woman in those videos as examples.
Okay, so you have these personal stories, these individual accounts laid out in the source, but then the material takes a sharp turn, doesn't it?
It really does. Right alongside all that, the source starts introducing these allegations, connecting the whole movement to Russian influence. It's quite the shift.
So what does it say specifically?
Well, the source mentions claims from CNN alleging that Russian bots were actively using the hashtag walkaway hashtag. The aim, according to the source citing CNN, was to hurt the Democrats before the midterm elections.
And the source itself states directly that hashtag walkaway, quote, has been connected to Kremlin-linked Russian bots.
Yeah, and it even says, according to this source, that it was the seventh most popular Russian-influenced hashtag at the time.
Seventh most popular. Okay. And then it connects this to someone's arrest.
Yes, the source brings up the arrest of Marina Butina. She's described in the material as allegedly operating as an unregistered Russian agent
Uh-huh.
and accused of conspiring to, infiltrate American political groups.
And there's even pop culture reference.
Right. Kind of oddly, the source mentions the Jennifer Lawrence spy movie Red Sparrow right in the middle of discussing these Russian agent allegations involving Butina and the movement.
Huh. Okay. And then the source creator seems to add their own interpretation on top of this.
Exactly. This is where the source itself, or its creator, explicitly states that the people in those hashtag walkaway YouTube videos, the ones mentioned earlier, the diverse individuals.
The white, black, transgender people.
Yes, the source calls them, and this is a direct quote from the material, Russian agents, just flat out. White Russian agents, black Russian agents, even some transgender Russian agents.
Wow. And it also mentions something about a Kremlin order.
Yeah, the source includes a claim about a, quote, direct order from Kremlin. Seems like it's a typo maybe. But it says Gremlin to amplify and spread those specific videos.
So what we end up with in this one body of source material is, well, two completely different stories side by side.
Pretty much. On one hand, you've got the movement presented through these personal accounts, people saying they're disillusioned, giving their political reasons.
And then right next to it in the same source, you have these direct allegations that it's all influenced, maybe even orchestrated by foreign actors, specifically Russia.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast presented within this single source.
And just to reiterate for everyone listening, our job here is just showing you what this source material contains. We're putting these different perspectives and claims out there exactly as they appear in the document we're looking at.
So you, the listener, can see how this particular source presents these, well, conflicting narratives.
Right. So when you step back and look at all this together, what does it really tell us?
Or I think it really underlines just how complex the narratives around political movements can get these days, especially online movements.
Yeah, you see how personal stories, someone saying, I changed my mind for these reasons, how quickly that can get tangled up, at least in this source material, with these really serious claims of foreign interference.
Absolutely. It shows that in the public conversation, or at least within certain sources like this one, someone stated personal political shift can immediately be placed alongside accusations of being, well, a bot or even an agent.
It really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? When you encounter something like this online and you're presented with such conflicting accounts within the same source, how do you even begin to evaluate what's really going on, the origin, the authenticity?
It's tough. This source is a perfect example of that challenge.
So recapping what we found in this source, we saw the personal ideological reasons people gave for participating in hashtag walkaway, leaving the Democratic Party.
The reasons articulated by figures like Straka and others mentioned.
And then simultaneously, the source presented these very specific claims linking the movement to Russian bots, influence campaigns, even espionage arrests.
Yeah, quite a stark juxtaposition within the material itself.
It definitely leaves you thinking.
Which brings us to a final thought, perhaps. Given that a source like this can contain both these deeply personal stories of political change and these detailed claims of orchestrated foreign activity, how do you, as someone trying to understand the world, navigate this kind of information landscape? How do you figure out the real motivations and forces behind movements you see popping up online?